put up the link 3 seconds before we went on air.
The broadcast is live.
So, hello, welcome to TF Live, to TF Together, Florentine's live events channel. My name is Kamin Mohammadi. I'm delighted to be here with my very good friend and brilliant author and thriller writer, Christobel Kent,
Hi.
who is a passionate lover of and long-term part-time resident of Florence.
Long-term, part-time, 2 minute caveats there. Yeah, I've been.
Better eliminate some of those.
Most definitely, yeah.
The part-time part. So there you go. We'll stop now because otherwise we'll just do it.
Yes, are we not just doing it already?
Are we on live? Are we?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness! I thought we were rehearsing. Hello, everybody.
No, we're not rehearsing.
That was good. Here we are. Forgive me. We're here with Christobel, and we're here in Christobel's apartment, which is a very special place because readers of my book, Bella Figura, will know why. But we'll get to that, I imagine. I'm delighted to be here, though, today with Christobel because she has her new book out.
The Viper.
And this is the 6th and last, right?
I have never said last. I have never said last. But it certainly completes a pattern. It completes a circle, if you like. It comes back. I think I've said everything I want to say, but I don't know because I love these characters. I've had them in my heart for so long.
Well, I don't
think they're going anywhere.
Well, let's tell the audience about them. The Viper is, well, let's say the latest and the 6th in the Sandro Cellini series, which Sandro is a particularly lovely Florentine detective.
Yeah.
And should we put him up there? There you go, Sandro the 6th, it says.
Yeah.
And so there's been 5 previous books. There's been a bit of a gap.
Yeah.
And the wonderful thing about the Sandro series is, of course, that, each book is wonderfully self-contained, but there is the story, the bigger story of the characters that runs.
The bigger story is my story.
Right.
It's not my story. It's the story that I have in my head the whole time that makes them real. It's a story of a marriage, and a friendship and childless marriage that has this sadness at the heart because they wanted children. Not everyone does, but they wanted children. They had one, and their daughter died a few days old. And I think that's at the center of the trajectory, the recovery of that sadness, the understanding of that sadness, because it's a sadness that plugs into a lot of the bad stuff that we read about. If you read a detective novel to confront bad stuff, and in a way, Sandro and his wife Louisa and their not daughter, their adoptive child, or if you like, she's a girl that Sandro has saved from a life of crime. Not before she had been to prison, but when she comes out of prison, they take her under their wing. These 3 together across 6 novels circle around various crimes. They solve them. But at the center of each novel and at the center of the bigger picture is their individual sadnesses, personal sadnesses that they have to deal with in dealing with other people's difficulties and other people in violence and brutality and horrible tragedy in other people's lives. They edge towards resolving the things that they have been frightened of and unable to confront for decades in some cases.
Christobel, it's one of the many things that I love about this series, actually, is really that sense of the relationships, the psychology, and how your bigger overarching themes are reflected in, the stories in each book, the crime stories as well. Let's tell the audience, though, who, if in case they don't know you, where your relationship with Florence comes from, why Sandro, and also, let me just tell everyone, by the way, Christobel is an extremely prolific novelist.
Terrifying for me.
I write one book, she's written 5. In the meantime, you put me to shame. So I want to just detail what they are. I seem to think that here you've got, what, 15?
15. I've also got two more I've written. One's coming out next year and one will be coming out the year after. So I've written 17 novels that will be eventually published. Yes.
In the time it took me to brush my teeth. So prolific is that, right?
10 of which were set in Italy. The first 10 were set in, well, no. The first 9 were set in Italy. Then I wrote 5 set in England, which were successful, very successful. One of them was very successful, The Loving Husband, chosen by Richard and Judy, and that made me more prominent. I think everyone knows that in writing books is hard work, and you don't get paid very much. And a lot of people write amazing books, and nobody's ever heard of them. Actually, that's true. You need, and I had the massive piece of luck, which was to be selected by Richard and Judy, which I'm sure nobody in Italy knows Richard and Judy, but
for the UK it's like the equivalent of the Oprah Book Club.
Yeah, it's a little
right.
Bit like
it's
that,
a bit like that. So hence best-selling author.
Yeah.
And fantastically a wider audience have at least discovered you. So I want to talk about you became. Is this correct to say a writer in a way in Florence, right? Because your first books were about Florence. Is that
Florence.
Right?
Everything started with Florence for me. Where 20 years ago we lived here as a family. I had 4 small children, and I had given up work to look after them. I had been working in publishing in London, and went on doing a bit of freelance. Then I had 1 child, and then another, and another, and then quite quickly stayed at home with them, and actually I found it quite sort of. It can be quite an isolating experience. I didn't, and a lot happened in those 10 years. We're talking about the 90s. Technologically, so much happened that by the time we came to live in Florence in 2000, I was probably unemployable because I didn't, the last computer I'd used was an Amstrad, so I had no, so I was on my own in Florence with these 2 went to school, and I had 2 small ones at home.
I want to tell everybody, in case you don't know, that Christobel is not only the most wonderful, prolific novelist and great friend, but she is also has the mother to 5 wonderful children. So she's and in that time she's also produced all of these books. So when I first met Christobel, I did actually say to her, I don't really know how you do all this. I can't have a full-time job and figure out how to wash my hair. So
I think it boils down to being a really bad housewife. I think if you are a really bad housewife, you can fit in quite a lot of stuff. I used to. Well, to go back to how it started in Florence, we were here 6 months only. I always call it a year because in my head that it filled up so much space. But we were here for 6 months, and it was sensory overload. I had lived in Italy before. I lived in Modena when I was much younger, but Modena is a quieter, safer place than Florence. And living with children, you feel more intensely the sort of darker side of a place. Maybe you're more alert. But I was also just at home. I wasn't working, so I had the kids, and I would lean out the window and look, and so much was going on in Florence that you never see going on in England.
Were you living right opposite the door?
We lived on the Via Romana, but opposite the back gate, the Annalena gate to the Boboli. We had a lovely flat, not quite big enough for all of us, but it was lovely and had the most amazing view. And also so much happened. It's because it's an arterial route into the city. We were quite high up. I would just lean out the window for hours on end, looking at the wisteria, looking at the Boboli, looking at the people coming up and down in the Boboli, and watching the bus crash into things. And the guy opposite in the antique shop going off for his lunch and living, for 4 hours with a woman and then not the same woman twice. This stuff was so, after a kind of quite closeted existence in an English village with children, that this to me felt like an expansion of my universe that didn't allow me to ignore it. And then I got home, England, and thought, I missed it so badly. And then just about a few months later, my youngest child, Molly, went to playgroup. And so I found I had mornings, and I sat and I thought, I just want to close my eyes and be back in Florence. And so I wrote the first line of A Party in San Nicolò, which was my first novel, which was set in San Nicolò, where now I have a tiny little flat. It began in a garden that I'd visited right towards the end of our time. There was open gardens in Florence. I don't know if that still happens, because I'm never here at that time of year, really. But I went to one just opposite where I live now, near the Porta San Miniato, and it was a magical place. And it was also quite, because Florence has so many austere facades that you never see behind, to be allowed through this amazing little tunnel, sort of carriage tunnel underneath this wonderful, forbidding facade, and then come out in a tiny little Italianate and also Italian formal garden. And then there was a little tiny bit of lawn, and then there was a little forest, and then there was a grove of figs and almonds. And I thought, this is like a fairy tale. Yeah. This whole city is like a fairy tale. It has worlds within worlds, and some of the worlds are nasty. And I love crime, so I ended up writing about crime. So that's where it began. And I wrote 9, as I say, I wrote 4 standalone novels. The fourth of those was The Florentine Revenge, which opens in a swimming pool. By then I had my flat and was here with my kids in the summer, and it was stiflingly hot and impossible to live. And so we had to find swimming pools. We found a swimming pool down in Galuzzo, in Pruneta, down that way, called the Zodiac, something like that. And or maybe I called it the Zodiac in the novel. And I imagined a little girl walking out to go and find the loo, a little girl of English parents walking out to go and find the loo in this sort of packed pool area with bodies lying sunbathing, and the parents are kind of being chill about it when she doesn't immediately come back, and then she never comes back. Right. And that story is the story that Sandro had to, his book was his big case.
So this is the first book that Sandro appears in.
Sandro appears in that novel. It's a prequel, really, to the series. He appears in that novel, but before I saw Sandro in my head, I saw his wife, Louisa, who is actually a woman who I liked, who'd served me in a shop. I mean, it was as much as that. And who struck me as archetypally Italian. She was very dignified, rather lovely to look at, thick black hair. And she just dressed in that sort of wonderful, orderly way that Italians have of putting things in the right place on their bodies, and wearing strong, spiking stuff without being self-conscious about it. All those things. I loved her. And so that was Louisa, who's Sandro's wife. And I didn't know much. Sandro was a kind of a shadowy presence. And Julie, the girl who they adopt, Giulietta Sarto, was also in that novel. She was the girl who gave out the keys to the lockers in the swimming pool where the child has disappeared, and she ends up playing a part in A Florentine Revenge, which deals with the death of the man who murdered that child. And Sandro had given information to the child's father about who they thought might have done it, and then the man turns up dead, and Sandro gets fired from the police force, and then dot. I didn't intend to make him into a series.
So how did the series come about?
A friend of mine, a husband of a friend of mine, who is also a friend of mine, Angus McKinnon, dear Angus, he is an editor at Atlantic, and he said, I think you should write a series. I think Sandro has got legs as a character, and I felt he had embedded himself. I mean, I think writers generally know that some characters are sort of disposable. I mean, they can serve a purpose, or they might not be very good characters, but they can be just little side characters. But little side characters can become big characters. And Giulietta is one of those. She's this little spiky, feisty proto Lisbeth Salander, is she, from the Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, which I wrote these books before those books came out, but she's very like that. She's a little spiky, wounded person who fights. And Sandro and Louisa rescued her after she came out of prison, and So they have this little awkward threesome, and they love each other, and they love each other more as the books go on. Sandro and Louisa, his wife, have always loved each other, but they've gone through, as in many marriages, they've gone through times when they stopped talking to each other, they stopped communicating with each other. They didn't. The sadness, which is the loss of their child, and in fact, the abducted girl from the swimming pool. Sandro investigates that murder at a time when he, in the little window when he and Louisa could have tried for another child, but because he was investigating the murder of a child, it simply became impossible for them to come together and do that thing that requires immense intimacy and closeness. They couldn't do it, and then the time went past, and so that murder that set him on his detective career. And I mean, I really, in a way, I'm saying that life does unexpected things, and things that are terrible, but will still set you in a direction that might end in a good place. And that's what happened. That's what I wanted to happen for them. And it's one of those when as a couple you endure a huge, awful thing like that, like an abduction and murder, or like the loss of a child. You could fall apart. You could fall apart, and often that happens, and it's nobody's fault. But I wanted them not to fall apart. Yes. I wanted them to be happy. I wanted them to work and work and work, because they're both workers. These two people, super workers.
And did you know? Because this relationship is it's not a backstory. It
evolves through the six.
Yes. So did you know that being interested in this relationship and the things that you'd set up for them to examine and discover and solve, did you know this was going to be a series, and that you had all of these books to do that in?
I did feel that it was. Yeah. Well, I had a commission for. I think it was 3 books and then 3 books. So yes, I knew I had to write 3, and then I got commissioned for another 3. And then when I'd written 5, my editor wanted me to try something different, because they weren't selling super well, because because who knows?
Because who knows why?
They're fantastic books, actually.
They are fantastic books. Take it from me. Actually, honestly, they really are amazing. And I have to tell you that that Christobel is the person who sent me out to Florence and changed my life. And actually, when I arrived here in this very flat, I would sit on this very sofa and read your books. And your first book, Party in San Nicola, of course, was the first one that I read, because here I was in San Nicola. And this was, by the way, just 12 years ago, but before smartphones and all of the technology we have at our fingertips now. So I actually, instead of using Google Maps or even a map or even a guidebook, I used your books to map Florence. I would literally read your books and go the next day and check out the places that you'd written about. And it was you were such a presence with me, Christobel, because I was following in your character's footsteps around the place, and I would recommend this as a really wonderful way to get to know Florence, because she's not going to just take you to the Uffizi,
Yeah, no, I don't think I've ever
taken anyone to. You might pass the Uffizi, Because the wonderful thing about all of Christobel's Florentine books, the Sandro Cellini series especially, is you really show us. I mean, you can see your love of Florence, and I think you give that to Sandro, right? He loves his city so much.
Well, he has the campanalismo, which is the characteristic of many Italians that I know for sure, which is that he loves his little area.
Yeah.
He loves his quartiere, and he's from Santa Croce, but which is a working class, traditionally working class little bit of Florence, and his office is in San Frediano, which is the most working class bit of Florence, as far as I know. Because I wanted him to be out of the main flow of tourists. I mean, there are bits of Florence, as everyone who's been here for any length of time will know, that are dominated by the stream of you literally can't get across the river of tourists. I am myself, unfortunately, still a tourist. I mean, I feel that it's difficult, and what will happen with the pandemic, who knows? But I feel that tourism should be so respectful now.
Yes,
it should have been respectful always. But
yes,
I think maybe this is a lesson that we learn, is that there are people here who are vulnerable in all sorts of ways. With the pandemic, we know that that this is one specific and frightening way in which they're vulnerable. But the buildings are vulnerable. The businesses, there are certain businesses that are vulnerable. There are
craftsmanship is vulnerable. The heritage, it's all.
Florence is not just a big sort of sponge to soak up all our
or a kind of or a sort of theme park, And actually, the thing is that the more that Florence has kind of become, I suppose, like that over the years, or visibly because of the hypertourism and stuff, the more I cling to the Sandro books, because actually what you show us is the gritty Florence. You show us the dirty, the grimy Florence. I said this. I think you see. I think not just obviously, but you give.
I like to come at it from a different angle. And this, I mean, the Viper was, if you like, was stimulated by the sight of a little. It's not set in a commune, but it deals with the fallout from a commune on the edge of Florence, foreigners in the 70s, around about the time of the Mostro di Firenze. And although that doesn't come into it, but it has that vibe of foreigners blundering into an old culture and making a mess. And a lot of my books have dealt with that, with this clash of, you have to be careful. You can't just go in and make a mess and expect the wrong things of people. And the commune is based on this little farmhouse that I used to see with a strange mural on the side of it, in the middle of. I think everyone knows where this is. Yeah. It's in the middle of, on the way to the Siena.
Yes.
And then you go round it. The road goes round it, and it's got a little patch of earth around it, where vegetables are grown. And then there's this very decrepit farmhouse with a big mural on the side, and it just always looked terribly sinister to me. So many things in Florence have looked sinister to me. I'm not used to watching, drug deals being done on the street. I wouldn't know that. You'd have to smack me in the face with it before I would recognize it, and I got smacked. I was once calling my kids on the phone from a call box way back when call boxes were a thing. I didn't have a mobile phone. I was calling my kids because I was buying this apartment, and there was this girl circling the telephone box, sort of making noises, angry noises, and eventually she just snatched the phone from me because she needed to take some kind of important call. And it was frightening. And I've had many frightening moments in Florence, and it's interesting and frightening, and those are the stimulus.
Well, that's the side of Florence that we get to see so beautifully in your books. There's always so much atmosphere. There's so much. I feel like each book has its own kind of weather system. The weather has a big part.
Well, I find it's actually a fairly inhospitable climate. There are months of the year which are divine, but then in August I've written about August, where it's absolutely intolerable to be in an air-conditioned flat.
Here we are.
And there's the first one of Time of Mourning, which I absolutely love. The first in my series is set in November, the anniversary of the Great Flood. 4th of November, is it the 4th? I think it's the 4th. Yeah. And it's pouring with rain. As everyone knows, when it rains in Florence, it really rains. and also, like so much, it's over the top. It's too much. It's extreme. Walking down the Via dei Bardi when it's pouring with rain, because those great houses have a steep hill behind them. You get water whooshing out under the stable doors that are in the middle. It's just amazing. And you get thunderstorms that blow your mind, that will circle the city because of the hills. So yeah, I like the weather. I like weather. I haven't.
Well, they're a big part of your. They're
yes. So the Viper is set in the autumn,
right?
And it's the murders that are being uncovered have taken place. Happened in the summer. So there are two decomposing bodies discovered behind this old farmhouse that once long ago was a commune run by Johanna Nielsen, a Danish heiress. Or is she Swedish? I can't remember now.
Well, that's the thing with books, right? They come out a while after.
I wrote it quite a long time ago. Johanna Nielsen, who is this flower child on the outside, tall and elegant and very, very un-Italian, barefoot, long hair, pale. And Sandro in the 70s was summoned as a rookie cop to this old farmhouse where these barefoot foreigners were wandering about, sort of tinkling their wind chimes and doing strange things in dark rooms.
Yeah.
And the neighbours had dobbed them in for immorality, for in fact sort of selling underage sex in the farmhouse. And because there was no evidence of this, they didn't know if it was malicious, which could easily have been malicious report then. And so Sandro, who is then in his early 20s, just started as a cop, was sent along to investigate, and he just started going out with Louisa. And so they were in this tricky early stage of their relationship where he doesn't tell her everything. When he does, they have a change. I don't know. But something happened. She and Louisa sort of know something happened on that job when he was a young boy, and he didn't really know what he was doing. And he came in to this sort of dope-scented, tinkling gloom of the farmhouse. And something happened. He never told Louisa about it, and she never asked. And he assumes, as people can assume, that she would have had no idea, but she knew. She didn't know what had happened, but she knew something had happened. And so when 40 years later, nearly 40 years later, or in fact more than 40 years later, she is this Johanna Nielsen is found dead. And with another person in a hut on her own land, which she hadn't been in the commune for years, but she's back there. When Sandro comes home and tells Louisa that he's been asked by his old friend in the police force to be a consultant on this case, Louisa has a kind of visceral reaction. She knows that this is bad news for Sandro. And she, because she also knows that it's her chance to find out what it was that happened back then, and whether this death is related to what it was that happened back then. So maybe I should read a little bit.
I was just going to say, let's have a little bit of a reading. I think that would be a treat.
I can read a tiny little bit. So Sandro, this is not quite at the beginning.
I feel I need to find it.
La Vipera. La Vipera is the name of the farmhouse, by the way. La Vipera. You do remember it, right? Closing his eyes now and feeling the last warmth of the sun falling through his own kitchen window, it was the smell that Sandro Cellini remembered. Incense rising in the rooms where the shutters had been closed against the low evening light. He remembered brushing against something that tinkled as he came inside. Dust motes hanging in the light that slanted through the shutters, and a chill inside the house's thick walls. He remembered the exact proportions of the big kitchen and the odd sadness he had felt on entering it. A room like his grandparents' kitchen, a marble slab for working pasta, a huge smoke-blackened chimney breast. Only the sight of this one would have made his grandmother weep. The marble loaded with the detritus of a disordered household, beer bottles and spilled food, and half a motorcycle engine dismantled in black grease. And he remembered the drawings that covered every inch of the kitchen's crumbling plaster walls and scrawled and looped outside too on the wall facing into the hillside. Some passing artist, one of them had said. One of the women had told him that, and as he remembered, a face swam into view, small, square chin, defiant. 5 women, 1 man. He could visualize them in a kind of arrow formation, and there she was, her, their leader at the arrow's head, tall, the long hair, the long, slender fingers, the pale eyes, her lover, the Italian guy, at her left hand, the small one with her defiant look at her right. I remember it, said Sandro. So this is Pietro has asked Sandro to come and
Pietro is Sandro's old partner in the police force.
Yeah, they were a little team. Pietro is younger than Sandro by about 10 years, and he has stayed friends with him throughout the series, and and taken his advice and given advice, and they still are close.
Their relationship is also interesting and develops too, and I think the sort of tensions between and Sandra's sense of whether he's in or out in terms of the
it's this novel. For the first 5, Sandro doesn't want to impose on Pietro. He doesn't want to ask for insider information. He wants to maintain their friendship, and he's a dignified man, and he would never ask things of a friend that might cause any discomfort. So he's never pushed his luck. But there's always, because Pietro still has the uniform and Pietro still is in the gang. In a way, it's like for him being pushed out of a family and out on his own, and also having to confront, to be a family man, to be Louisa. It's just him and Louisa now, so they do have to work things out. But in number 6, in the Viper, he's official. He's not. He hasn't got a uniform, but he goes back into the operations room and he talks to
back in the
Pietro. And I was interested in how that would feel for him walking back into the big police station that I've put in Porto al Prato. I think there is still a big police station there, walking through the big rooms and seeing what's changed and what hasn't changed, and still not wanting to push it too far, not wanting to make problems, and also his boss now, the big cheese, is a woman, so so they are both kind of having to be obedient to a greater power. The sense, the amount of psychology and interest in relationship that goes through these books, I think, is another thing that I've always really loved about your books, Christobel, because often thrillers are so they're fast, they're plot driven, they're turn the page. Christobel's books are all of these too, but I don't see any point in. Why read a book if it's doesn't become real to you? I think some people love the puzzle, and that I pay homage to the puzzle. I think the puzzle is fantastically important in a detective story. You must solve the puzzle. You must make the puzzle clear to your readers. But I personally cannot read a book if I don't believe in a single character in it. And some of those puzzle books are not about character.
No, they skim over that, and actually you don't do that, not even at all, but actually your characters are so alive and they develop, and I suppose having the sense of the series as well is you allow them to develop over time, so we get to live with them. But I've just loved that, I've always loved your interest in your characters, the relationships between your people. And I suppose, I don't know, maybe because I know you, and I also know that you were writing these books as you were bringing up your kids, I can see also how you're looking as a mother. There's because the central point is that this the lost baby. Right?
It's funny that I've chosen to write about a childless couple,
right?
I think because when you have children, you are impeded to such a high degree from doing anything useful at all, apart from bringing up children. Although I left that to my husband. They I don't know. To me, the books are all about children. It's about this belonging.
Yes.
But you can, the longing itself. The nurturing instinct is a wonderful human thing, whether you have a child to bestow it on, or whether you bestow it on something or someone else. That's the wonderful thing. That's the magical thing.
Well, and in fact, your couple, your Sandra and Louisa, do have a sort of adoptive child, and you show us that how you can, that those love connections can become like your family. But
they don't go away just because you don't have children. They don't, right. wanting to protect a vulnerable person, or wanting to make food for someone, all those things are still there. That's the magic. And I think to say that people because people don't have children, they're not allowed, that is absurd, because humanity would not, it's just part of being a human being. So I do find that interesting. And also there are things that are inverted in it. I've said before, like Louisa is my husband. She's not me. She's the practical one, the one who does everything right and is orderly and careful. and Sandro is a slightly useless one who tries really hard and is constantly sort of stubbing his toe against things. I mean, that's he's clever. He's a good policeman. But he sort of bumbles around things. He's a bit of a Columbo as a policeman, I think.
Christobel, do you bring people into the books?
Real people?
Yeah.
One or two.
How tempting is that? Because I write memoirs, so obviously that's a different relationship with the characters. But do you meet someone and go, "Oh, that person was hateful.
No,
I'm going to make them a trap"?
I think it's definitely you have to use negative capability in that way. I would never go out and think I can turn this person into a character. Sometimes you do it for revenge purposes.
Right.
Sometimes. There is a woman I put into the fifth Cellini, the last one, which was called the killing room. I put a woman in there because I just really didn't like her. And I think she works, but those are not satisfying characters because they are not. You take bits of people, or people you've met long ago, or somebody you just walked past in a shop. Those are the people you use when you're not thinking. They just wash into your mind and something sticks.
Right.
You can't observe someone and think, I'll put you in a novel and I'll describe your hair and your earrings and the way you talk. It's not about that. It's about your attention being caught by somebody and you thinking, what is it about that person? What is that person doing? Why are they there? Why are they in that corner? Or why have they got that expression on their face? And then the person is gone. So you only have the kind of distant memory of that person. So it's, in my case, I don't know about other writers, but in my case, it is people who I have a fleeting impression of, to whom I owe nothing. Because once you know someone, and definitely when you love someone, you see too much of them.
Yeah.
There's so much of them in your head.
The complexity.
And you are afraid to put them down on the page
because
people are too complicated.
You know what? I saw a little comment from Helen. I think there it is. Thank you, darling. How much do we talk about the joys and drama of writing, exchange views and technique? Pretty much never. No. Is that the case? The truth is, Helen, that as I say, while I'm sharpening my pencil, Christobel has published 3 books. so we write very different.
Also, we write completely different kinds of books. We don't write the same.
We write very different books. I write about real people and for my why, why do I? But I do, and you don't. But what we've got in common, obviously, is apart from our great love, is Florence. You sent me here. I met Christobel, for people who don't know, some years ago in a tricky moment in life, and we had a rather delightful random holiday. Yeah. And we
were quite prickly around each other
for like about the first sort of 6 hours or something, and then early the next morning I remember we had a hug and declared undying love.
Carmen's sort of unstoppable generosity of spirit. To be honest, I am not an unstoppably generous person spiritually.
It's not true.
But I can be nice now and again, but Carmen is she just doesn't give up. If somebody is prickly with her, she knows we're on holiday for a week. We've got to all get on. And this person who I think it's because I'm a cook and you're a cook. You came in and you'd made a fruit salad for breakfast.
Well,
what is this woman who makes fruit salad for breakfast?
Do you know what it was? We were the 2 people. Well, I didn't drink, and you, having small children, were used to waking up early. Oh, yeah. So we were the 2 people in the house that were up early in the morning.
Yeah,
down
it was
in
a
the kitchen.
territorial thing.
And so I was making fruit salad, and you would come with your I described this in Bella Figura, and I don't know, I can't even remember now if it stayed in or not, but I wrote whole scenes around when I first met you. But that's when you cloned into that. But yes, because Christobel turns up, and we've got lovely French filter coffee, but she's got her Italian mocha machine, and she's got her little thing for frothing the milk, and this is what I
take it everywhere with me, but especially France. Especially France, because the coffee in France, and the sound of Francophiles dropping dead, the coffee in France is horrid. So I take it with me.
Stop the lights.
Everything else about France is absolutely bloody fantastic. I don't like the coffee in France. I love France though. And so I want to go, but I take the coffee pot with me. And we were in France, and I had my coffee pot.
And I thought, who is this woman who has brought her own coffee pot? Very intriguing. And so we became friends. I think about 10 minutes after that, I remember we hugged and went, I love you, I love you.
Yes, and then you gave me a massage. And I am a very English person about massage. I don't like it.
I am a massage therapist. I just wasn't random.
No, it wasn't random. It was something I ought to have been paying for, but didn't. And so I felt I'm usually so self-conscious in a massage. Also, I talk too much. I think you're supposed to just be quiet and listen to the whale music, and I just talk. And I think massage does not work.
I do believe I talk back.
And I think because Carmen talked to me while she was doing the massage, and we chatted, and she was talking to me about Iran, which is a country I don't know at all, but except through reading bits of Carmen's writing. And it struck me that Iran and Carmen herself would have been very at home in Florence because of the various technical aspects of the culture. Wow. The sort of politeness, the courtesy, the elaborate courtesy, the food, the orderliness in the midst of chaos, those things, and also the sense of it having all gone back many centuries, of this thing that's etched in them. You can't eradicate it. And I just thought I could just see Carmen in Florence, and in fact she did fit in so well.
So can I just say, do you see how good she is at character and psychology and understanding? Because I didn't know that you thought that until this moment. But you know that I came here, and the thing that, of course, got me totally involved with Florence, apart from the beauty,
was the fact that their time.
Was the fact that I felt like I was at home. You know, it was so much about kind of going to. Also, an aspect of Iran that is, you know, not quite the same anymore. You know, the seasonal nature of the food and the generosity and the, you know, so yeah, it really took me back. So that's amazing. You spotted that before.
Well, it struck me. I think you just struck me as somebody whose bearing would just be immediately, instantly accepted in the Florentine setting, because you are elegant and dignified and beautiful. I have walked down the street with her, and men just stare. It's very depressing. Most
oh, and on that stuff. So we're socially distant. The fact is,
we are.
You all need to come and be taken under Christobel's wing, and maybe she can change your life too. Because who knew? I didn't know these things about myself, and there we met, and we had it was a few days we had together in France. And Christobel turned to me and said, "Well, why don't you go to my flat in Florence?" And I said, "Yes, of course I will." Thinking people say things. And Christobel,
I wanted her to go.
She came to London, and she came to my flat, and she gave me the keys. And you even took a bag.
Your boxes.
Yeah, you took my boxes of books and drove them over here and left them in the flat. Which, I mean, who knew?
And also, I benefited enormously, because Carmen would send me these great long emails of. Well, when I was missing Florence, some people just don't communicate. I've lent you my flat. Tell me what's happening, and look out of the window. Tell me what's happening. And Carmen did that.
You couldn't stop me, darling.
Yeah, it was wonderful. Everything I very quickly knew an awful lot about Carmen.
We got that. I always feel like that first year when I was here in your flat is, I hope that, I don't know if I managed to put any of that across in Bella Figura, but in there I sort of called you the fairy godmother. I don't know if you like that or not, but you know, that was meant in a beautiful way.
Yes,
but because
not grandmother, you were
you were always popping up. No, you weren't popping up because we were in touch like 5 times a day.
Yes, we were. There's great.
But there were moments of crisis here when, you know, this was pre kind of, you know, mobiles and all the connectivity that we have now. When Christobel's landline would ring and I would, you know, pick it up going, pronto, thinking, oh, I'm being attacked. And it was Christobel, and it was, you always just had this instinct. I don't know if you remember, you called a few times, just in a moment when I really so it was such a beautiful thing, because in my memory of that first year, I know that you weren't actually here, but you were with me all the time. Oh, wow. You were walking around the streets with me. I was following your books. I was going to your characters. And then I was kind of sharing it with you, and it was such
it was a fun year.
It was, right? Because
and then you went and got married.
I know, but men
That was so much fun. But we did talk about writing now and again. I mean, I think it's quite nice
well, I
to
would
know
despair
that
and go.
we're both in the kind of deadline business. I mean, you sort of do sympathise when somebody has to.
Well, I'm in awe of Christobel because she seems to me, you tell me if I'm right or wrong, but you seem to me to have a good routine and absolute discipline, and that is something I envy and long for. Because, you know, we'll be talking at like 10 a.m. and you'll go, I've done my work for today. And I'm still at the point where I'm kind of cleaning the windows in an act of procrastination, you know.
Yes, well, I'm somebody who does something straight away.
Yeah,
that's what I am.
Yeah, I'm not.
I don't like. I can't have things hanging over me. And also, I want to have a day where I can live and go out and there is quite a lot to be done. Even though most of my children have gone now, sadly, I have 2 at home. There's a fair amount. When I started out writing, there was so much to do that I couldn't afford to spend more than 2 hours writing.
Right.
It's fine. I just am somebody who can. I do love writing as well.
Yeah.
I really love it when I'm doing it. It's almost always. I miss it now. I finished. I delivered in, I don't know when it was, a couple of months ago, the novel that will be out the year after next. I delivered it, and I thought, thank God for that.
Weren't you writing 2 at once? So.
That was last year.
Right.
I wrote The Viper and The Widower.
You see what she's like? She's amazing.
Well, I had to write this one because it was still in my contract. I still had a book left over in my contract, and I always wanted to write it. I love these books more than anything. I really do. I always wanted to write it because I love the people. And I knew that if I was going to, because I had a contract with another publisher by then, to write my English books, I knew that I was going to have to sneak it in. And I had started, I kind of had a little idea for it 6 years ago when I stopped writing them. And so I just went with that. I had a couple of pages written, the opening scenes, and I just thought, I'll just go with that and see where I get to. And wrote it in a fairly quick 4 or 5 months.
In all.
Well,
seriously,
as long as it's good.
It can take me that long to
write. It's got to be good. Writing something quickly is nothing. Writing something good quickly is the thing you have to do.
It's good. It's good because it's brilliant. It's got Florence. It's got Christobel. It's got all of her curiosity, her passion for the city, her passion for people, for relationships. All of this, this sense of examining people's ongoing relationships, how you live a marriage, how you live with or without
and the
kids.
secrets that you keep from each other over a long marriage. There can be some pretty big secrets, and sometimes you even forget you had them. You even forget you have never spoken about them. You think, you assume things, and then suddenly something that you've assumed 40 years later turns out to have been completely wrong. And the thing that Louisa assumed that Sandro had happened to Sandro in that house is actually the opposite, what had in fact happened to him. And it's something that could have provoked him to murder this woman. ...
So I wanted just I don't know if there's any questions out there that we need to deal with, but so I'm going to plow on in case there are. This whole thing that's happened to Florence, I've noticed in the past 12 years, Christobel, while I've been here, that, it's changed quite a lot. And obviously there's been the pace of technology that's changed dramatically since I first arrived. And, the Airbnb and hypertourism and the flights and all of that. And we've all seen, Florence change. And obviously now, as we touched on it, COVID is perhaps going to change it again, maybe, we hope. Is that reflected in your book? Because, of course, the Florence that we see in your books has those elements in them because, as you say, you deal with foreigners and they're kind of...
The clash.
The clash, exactly. You have the first book is around one of those kind of art schools that foreign students come to.
Down in the courtyard.
That one. And, the next one is like an artist retreat in the country again. But, this kind of thing that happens a lot in Florence and in Tuscany. So you are dealing with that, but we don't see that shiny 5-star tourist Florence so much in your books. We get the gritty, the atmospheric, the skull beneath the skin kind of thing. have you reflected the change in your books? Because, you know, Sandro, for example, is in your books. As he goes through the books, he's trying to learn how to deal with his mobile phone, with technology.
The mobile phone.
You know.
Yeah. Well, the mobile phone, I like the idea of Sandro. Well, it took me a hell of a long time to get a smartphone. I mean, a really long time. And in fact, the first smartphone I saw was in the market of San Lorenzo when I was buying ham. And the American guy next to me had this thing, and he was flicking through these pictures, and I was thinking, whoa, that's cool. Can I have one of those? And I knew Sandro because I know Sandro in my heart. I knew, and he's also like 15 years, no, is he 10 years older than me. He resists technology, although actually I think most Italians of every age embrace technology.
Yes, absolutely.
They love the gadget, but he resists it. And there's a little bit. Louisa has got one too by the time.
And there's the computer and the laptop, you know, and all of that going, which
he calls it the magic phone. Yes, I try. I think I keep them pretty much in their bubble. I don't really want to. I mean, if there are big things. I mean, one of them I was writing while Berlusconi. The Berlusconi
number 3, I think.
Number 4
with
Darkness Descending.
Yeah.
And I wanted to put something in about what it felt like to be in a society where Berlusconi was the big boss and had got, you know, a significant number of votes and perfectly kind of apparently decent people have voted for him.
Something that many people can relate to now in different
countries. Of course, it can get a lot worse, as we now know. But I wanted to write about but there was this sex scandal and the sort of the sleaziness of it that you felt was being tolerated in Italy, and it shouldn't have been because there are so many decent people in Italy who disapprove of that kind of thing. It shouldn't be an acceptable way to behave if you're the leader of the country. Of course, it now seems like the dim and distant past, but I did want to reflect what was going on in the country at that point because it felt disgusting. That people and there were definitely, you know, movements in Italy to.
I was also noticing, apropos of all of this, that I think in your first book, it's the Lungarno Santa Rosa.
Yeah,
is a lot, and I think I don't know.
In a Time of Mourning.
Yes,
the first of these. Yeah.
Yes, the first Sandro book, which is the kind of key spot.
Yeah. It is.
And isn't that where now? I don't know if it is exactly, but there's now this lovely bistro Santa Rosa. Potentially right there, and I wanted actually to say to you
back there in years.
Let's go back and see, is this the place that you wrote about? Because actually the contrast is extraordinary.
What they're doing something in the
there's a lovely bistro there. It's got a garden, and I think it's exactly where you described. It's just behind the gate.
And the little shacks along the river, and there's a circle or something or other.
I think that might have turned into this place. I don't know, maybe one of our audience can tell us, but I just thought that was a kind of fascinating sign of what's going on.
Yeah, that's where the architect walks into the river, down by the weir there, and drowns himself in the first of the series, A Time of Mourning.
I'm sure someone can tell us if that's where actually the bistro is set, but to me that was just such a...
Yeah, well that playground I used to take the children to. There's one in the Piazza Tasso, and there was another one along the Arno on the Lungarno Santa Rosa, and they were both so scuzzy. And you were taking the children, and once I walked round the corner from the Viale into the Piazza Tasso, and I walked into one of the street cleaning machines that blew all the dog shit and everything into my face while I was pushing a buggy, and I remember thinking, this is the dark side of Florence. It was so scuzzy, but it was fantastically interesting, and there were very few tourists in the Piazza Tasso.
Well, that's changed now a little bit, so I think we should take a walk there soon and see if that's actually the spot where you wrote about, you know, and that's what I really thought, that trajectory over this series of books, I think, you know, that change of Florence.
Well, right? I think in a significant way, what appealed to me about Florence is that I felt things have changed very little. So that you could get the familiar landmarks, and yet, of course, at the same time, if your main character is slightly stick in the mud, or like all of us, just sort of doesn't want things to change, you can examine that. You can say why is there a great big sort of fancy bistro where it used to be the nice old men playing dominoes or whatever. Or thank goodness there's now a nice fancy bistro. You know, I think in a way it's that when things do change in Florence, it's kind of startling. You think, I thought that was going to be there forever. And then things that look like they've been there forever haven't. And it's the fascination of a culture you don't quite understand. I think that's why I find it endlessly interesting here, because I don't quite I take so many things for granted that I'm completely wrong about them. For example, in A Time of Mourning, I wrote a whole novel based around the anniversary of the flood. And I had in my head, because I was writing it in England, and just around the corner from here, on the side of the Church of San Nicolò, there is a plaque, Lazaro, all over the streets around here, saying this is fino a qui the Arno came up here on that day. And I had in my head the 6th of November, and I wrote the whole novel around the 6th of November, and it turns out it was the 4th of November. Okay. And of course, because it was in proof by the time I worked it out. Because I sent it to my oldest friend Camilla, who is a guide in Florence, and she said, wonderful book, but it caused a few problems because, of course, the action had started 4 or 5 days before that date. So there's 2 days make a big difference, right? But we're talking about Ognissanti and talking about All Souls and Halloween, and those are 2 important days. Yeah. So it opened on All Saints or All Souls Day in the revised version. So I had to tweak things a little bit. But so I do get things wrong. I am a person for whom facts turn at my fingertips into fiction. That is, I get them wrong. That's what I mean by that. A fact comes into my ear there, and it comes out as something quite different there. I'm not to be trusted with them.
Well, but you are to be trusted with lots of other things, darling. So I do say that really honestly. If anybody wants, if anyone is missing Florence, if anyone is away from Florence, but also if anyone is in Florence and missing a little bit the other Florence before the shiny stuff, and if anyone ever wants to come and go around Florence with a different kind of guide and a different point of view, I really, really recommend these books, the Sandro books, and also the other Florentine books, because I just, it's such a...
Yes, they've all been reissued now by my publisher of my English books, Sphere.
Brilliant. So they're all available. And they just really give you this wonderfully different, another layer of your relationship and point of view, and are amazing stories and have loads of heart, and they're thoughtful. They're very intelligent, to be thrilled.
Appearances. I take my books.
I find them quite,
immensely seriously. Yes. I mean, I'm not a particularly serious person. Somebody once asked me about getting emotional, because I'm sort of noisy, but I'm not. And I said, without thinking, I put all my emotion into my books, and I do. I think that's where I often sort of find myself feeling like crying when I've written a piece that I feel very intensely about. And that, I don't know if that's a good sign or not, but I take them, they are vastly important to me. And these ones, because they deal with such an important thing of dealing with, in the first novel, Louisa has just discovered a lump in her breast. And that's the string that ties that novel beginning to its end, is that on the Monday morning, it's Friday, she's found the lump, she goes to the hospital, she will get the results on the Monday, and everything happens in that weekend to do with a murder and the disappearance of a girl. But the thing that is at the back of Sandro's mind is, what the hell am I going to do? What happens if I don't have Louisa? How am I going to protect her? How am I going to not die of sadness? How am I'm not going to panic and freak out? I have got to be the sensible one. All of that is in his head, and I don't think I devote more than a few lines to it, but I think every single reader, that's what is important to me. Every single reader will know that feeling, whether that's happened to them, whether it's happened to someone they know, whether it's their greatest fear. That is something that they will it's the rope that they will be holding on to all the way through the book.
And this is what I really want to say. All of the brilliant things about this book, it's that sense of humanity. It's that sense of you really examining those human emotions through these brilliantly plotted books, wonderfully atmospheric, full of love for Florence, full of love for people, actually, and curiosity. So they're just so much more than what we say gialli, right? They're just so much more than thrillers.
But gialli are
also fabulous, right? So
crime fiction, it can be wonderful. I mean, I think some of my favourite writers have written crime novels. It's a way of bringing order into a disorderly world. It's a way of solving things that probably in real life you can't solve. It's a way of demonstrating relationships and the things that drive us all, what makes us angry, what makes us so sad we don't know whether we can go on living, all those things. And you can explore in a novel about sudden death, because what is it else that we're afraid of, but that we should be betrayed, or of violence, or of life ending. And one last thing I would say is that life is the important thing. That what I want to do is to make you be there and live in this amazing city where bells ring and you can smell gardenias and you can smell the stinking river and you can smell bakeries and you can smell a man's cigar smoke. And you can see people fighting in front of your eyes. You can see the most
on the street.
Exquisite architecture in the world. You can sense generations of history. I want everybody to know what that feels like to inhabit this city, because it's just the most beautiful place in the world.
There you go. I think that is I think that's the last word. We'll give it to Christobel. Buy this book, buy them all. You will not be disappointed. And I think we'll say goodbye, right? Thank you, darling.
Bye. Thank you for having me.